Next thing on the list is bold. I'm passionate about this issue. I guess you are, although we don't really have like a joint bolding mechanism in place here, so I'm not sure who did it. But basically, the next one on the list is exit planning. So I want to ask you this question: what the hell does that mean?
Well, everyone's going to leave their business at some point, whether it's because you want to, because you're forced to, or when it's not your choice and it's due to death or disability. And to me, exit planning really comes down to, do you want to receive the value in the business that you built? And if you don't proactively plan for that, businesses are very illiquid most times, especially when the economy's not doing great. Not many people are wanting to buy businesses, and if they are going to buy it, it runs into the issue of, okay, well, what are they going to do to my business now? That kind of will, leads us to the next bullet point, which we'll talk about after, in succession planning. But exit planning to me is really extracting the full value of your business. And how do you go about doing that? Receiving the full value. In a very, very oversimplistic way of thinking about it.
That's pretty well said. I would characterize it as, like, when you think of like going public, right? What that really means when you say you're going public is that you're going to hire an investment banker, an investment banking firm, and they're going to work on your business to package it and make it as shiny and beautiful as possible. And what that means in this context of a business is they're going to make sure that everything's buttoned up tight and it's operating efficiently, effectively, and there's as little loose ends as possible. So what we're talking about with exit planning is just a non-publicly traded, like a small, closely held business scenario where we're come in and you help a business to really tighten up, fix the issues, identify the issues, fix the issues, and get them in a position where they can sell in 3 to 5 years, you'd say? A fair short-term vision. You don't engage in exit planning for a 20-year horizon. You engage in exit planning on a short-term horizon, but it takes time.
Important to do it definitely important to do it a few years out, without a doubt.
Right. So say if it was a car, I'm making this up as I go. Say it was a car, the business is a car. You got to repaint it. You got to open up the hood. You really got to see what's going on under the hood. You got to fix it. And you got to really, look in the interior. You got to make sure it's all repaired and it looks good and it's functional. And that what you're representing the car is and does is correct, is accurate. And that, if you're representing,
it's like selling
a car,
and you don't do all this stuff at home and it doesn't appraise at what you sold it for, you're gonna be in a problem, bad situation.
The car could have a defect that you either know about or reasonably should know about, and boy, is that going to bite you in the butt when the buyer buys the car. It's nice and shiny packaged and has a ribbon on it, and it blows up in your face. So that's kind of what this is talking about, is really maximizing the value in a later date, but a short-term date. The alternative,
and as a side note, it's really important for businesses to get professional business valuations done. We talk about exit planning. You can't exit if you don't know what your business is worth. And there's lots of different ways of valuing businesses. I know this is kind of a side note, but I think it kind of goes hand in hand with exit planning. Is you can't be looking for purchasers of your business if you have no idea what your business is worth. And so the exercise of going through and getting business valuations done, especially when there's changes in the business or rapid growth in the business, it's no different than an estate plan. If there's a life change that happens, if you get another kid, if you get married, you got to update your estate plan. Well, if your business doubles in revenue, you should probably get your another business valuation done.
So, is it worth $20,000 to do a valuation somewhat regularly?
I wouldn't say necessarily need to do it regularly. Really, it's worth it when there are significant changes. I had a client whose revenue literally doubled from 25 million to 50 million over a 2-year span. And the buy sell plan that I did for them, was based off of one valuation, and it needed to be revised. There were changes in the business. So it's not even necessarily revenue change. There could be changes in the business in general that, you need to have those updates done. So I wouldn't say it's necessary to do it every couple of years, but if you're looking at the difference, even if your business went up 40%, that's still a significant change where it might be worth spending $20,000. But also, like you said, you want to start thinking about these things, the 3 to 5 year window from maybe when you want the exit to occur. So I think the closer you get to that point, I think the $20,000 cost of evaluation becomes more important. I don't think it's important necessarily for companies in their infancy to do it every couple of years, but when you get closer and closer to maybe wanting to exit your business, then it becomes more important.
Without straying too far, I do think you make a good point worth talking about. You're tying the valuation to something that has meaning, that's substantial, being your buyout planning, your disability buyout planning, your death triggered buyout planning. That's tied to contracts, and if you double in value, you need to cover that. And your gross.
I'm not going to jump ahead to the importance of contract language. We'll save that one.
I was trying to, be mindful of that. But now you're grossly underfunded, under whatever the word is. You don't have enough coverage to properly execute on those plans. So you have to. So in that case, it's tied to something that's really critical. Another thing it's tied to in estate planning is, say that your estate plan say you have a couple kids, three kids, 4 kids, whatever, and maybe one's in the business, 2 are not in the business, and some are getting the business as their inheritance and some aren't, and the value of that business, needs to be addressed, because its intent is to be fair. They should get the same amount as the other one, the business owner, the business inheriting child. The valuation becomes very important there, and there's ways to build that in so it is as fair as possible. Yeah. There was another really good reason to do valuation that you mentioned that was tied to something substantial. The funding of the contracts is one, the estate planning is another, and I forgot the other one, quite frankly. It will come to me, though.
The good thing is we'll have more of these coming, so.
It will come to me. It will come to me. It's relevant for succession planning too, which is the next thing on our list. So exit planning, just to recap, is, I know what I was going to say now. Exit planning is really important in the short term, 3 to 5 years. Packaging it, fixing it. It's not so much what I do, or I would say you do, as much as it is getting the team in place to work on it with a common vision and a structure.
That one is very much a team sport, as is all of this. But having the legal side, the financial side, the valuation side, the tax side, all of that needs to come together with exit planning. And so having the full team there is very, very important.
Right. And I would only just add one more thing to be clear on exactly why it's so technical. On the legal side, you're going to want to look at every contract this company has in place, every person that they have in place, the contracts with those people, the IP, is it protected, is it not protected? Are there litigation pending? Is there litigation reasonably likely to be pending? Are there formations, filings, licenses, everything? Is it in order? It's a lot of work just for that. That's a ton of work. Yeah. If it's not fixing it, then you got the tax side, which Chad can speak of, but you also have the operational side, who's doing what? Are you the right people doing the right thing? Is there fat in the business that needs to be cut? Is it efficient? Is it optimized? Do we need to improve the business from a purely business operational standpoint? Is there technology that's needed that would help displace, certain people and costs? If you want to speak on the tax side, just kind of briefly, and the financial side, to review what they have as well.
Are we talking about we move on to the succession, or still kind of on the
No,
exit plan?
just exit planning, just to kind of give a little bit of depth to why it's such a comprehensive area to focus on.
Well, from the financial side, a lot of times if you don't do the planning ahead of time, there may not be the funds available for the business owner to exit, and they may end up being tied in their business for a while. It kind of falls in with succession planning also, where if you don't have the right successor for your business, you're not going to turn it over. You're not going to exit. And so there's ways to position yourself, financially speaking, to almost pre-fund your exit. And there's different vehicles that you can use to do that.
By exit, by the way, I don't think we define exit, but exit means to sell.
Yes.
To either one or more parties, whether you hire a broker.
Yeah, you can sell outside, you can sell inside,
Right.
You can sell to family member, which you mentioned. And so that also comes down to planning, having those conversations about who do you envision selling this to one day, because that can dictate the type of planning that we do.
Great point. So if you were to want to give your business, if you're an owner, you want to cash out your business, and you have kids that want to be in the business, it's an interesting concept as to whether or not you choose to sell to a third party and let your kids figure it out themselves, how that works, or maybe sell to your kids, or give it to your kids as part of succession planning and estate planning and tax planning. These are the conversations that we have, right?
Yeah.
And there's no canned solution.
There's no right or wrong. I mean, there is wrong, but there's no right way to do it.
Or
Set in stone. There is wrong that can be done, but everyone's preference is probably the right way to position it. Everyone has their own preference in how they want to one day exit the business.
Yeah, I would say in my experience, I don't think that there's ever been one that was exactly the same as another.
Yeah.
The planning, the succession, the docs, prep, the conversations. The only other thing I wanted to mention was with exit planning was, when it comes to estate planning, say you have husband and wife, and husband is the owner of this business, it's doing well, and there's no planning. Shocker, it happens. Husband dies abruptly. Wife is not involved in the business. She's not equipped to run the business. There's no succession plan. What do you think happens in that case?
The wife most times runs the business to the ground, or her surviving spouse. They're not well equipped. They don't know how to run it. And whatever was built by the deceased spouse, the legacy kind of goes away if there's not the planning is not done.
Legacy is the key word there. That's one option. Another option is with a fire sale.
Yep.
Fire sale. I see fire sale being much more likely.
It's Wayne Huizenga getting the Dolphins for as cheap as he did. Everyone here in South Florida probably knows the Joe Robbie story, and there was not proper planning done, to say the least.
Tell them the Joe Robbie story.
To my recollection, Joe Robbie owned the Dolphins, and when he passed away, the family didn't have the liquid funds available to, in a broad sense, there's a lot of nuances, but they couldn't afford to pay the estate tax, and that needs to be paid within 9 months of date of death, and they had to basically fire sale the Dolphins to Wayne Huizenga for really pennies on the dollar. And I don't know if you want to elaborate on that a little bit, but that's the gist of it is that they didn't properly plan and they didn't have the funds available to pay what they needed to pay.
So fire sale is when a surviving spouse doesn't want to deal with the business. They just want to settle up the estate and move on, and that means selling the business for basically, like Chad's a really good example of a very famous asset that was fire sold. And so that means selling the business for fractions of a dollar. It is basically the opposite of what we're talking about in terms of exit planning. It's the opposite result.
Yeah.
That is the polar opposite result of planning ahead is to sell it quickly, without packaging, without doing the work, for as little money as possible.
Haimo.